With that, I call to the podium Monsignor Jeffrey Steenson, who, as you know, is the prelate of the personal Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter, and he's going to give us an update on the status and activities of the Ordinariate of the Chair. Monsignor, how welcome you are. We're happy to have you with us.
Thank you, Your Eminence, for the welcome, and I'm very grateful to all of you for your welcome and the privilege of serving in this house. It has been a fascinating and challenging journey this year. I was on December 31st a priest incarnated in the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, and I loved my relationship with the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, and I love my Archbishop very much. And that has been one of the bittersweet experiences of having to move from that relationship, but what an incredible opportunity that has been given to be a part of the Holy Father's work of welcoming people from the Anglican tradition into the Catholic Church. Your Eminence, I thought that I ought to do this officially, is to hand over to you my celebrate from the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, which expires at the end of this year. But I should really turn in my ID card.
Gratefully received. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Well, what I'd like to do this afternoon is quickly show you some images of what we've been up to, and they include you because, as you know, we do not have the powers of ordination in the Ordinariate, and so we've depended very much on the bishops to help us as we have begun this work of putting together the Ordinariate. And I'd like to just, in a very quick, brief moment, just show you some of the pictures. But first of all, let me tell you what an extraordinary thing is about to happen. On February 2nd, this will be the first official visit of the prefect for the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. And it's a deep honor that he has given us, that he is coming to St. Mary's Seminary, Houston, and Our Lady of Walsingham, Houston, to be a part of this symposium for the Ordinariate on Saturday, February 2nd, to which you're all invited, and Cardinal DiNardo said he'd be very happy to pay for your hotel bills. Right? No, sorry. Sorry. I just teasing. Okay. But you can see it's going to be a tremendous opportunity to have Archbishop Muller talking about the ecclesiology of the Apostolic Constitution, our delegate, Cardinal Wuerl, on evangelization, and Monsignor Steve Lopes, who has been helping from the CDF's point of view, shape our liturgical mission. So I invite you to come to that, and there will be details forthcoming. Cardinal DiNardo has been extraordinarily important and supportive through this journey. Here you can see the Cardinal dedicating the beautiful shrine of Our Lady of Walsingham, Houston, the outdoor shrine, which is a copy of the one in Norwich in England. That used to be the great pilgrimage site for Our Lady in Northern Europe until it was knocked down by Henry Tudor. And it's now come to life in Our Lady of Walsingham in Houston. And Cardinal DiNardo was part of our first formation class, and he taught the first session on the Petrine ministry to our men. Archbishop Rodi had the privilege of ordaining our first priest, Matt Menuti, on June 2nd in Mobile. And here's our most recent ordination, a deacon's ordination in the Diocese of Brooklyn on last Saturday, Belin Gonzalez y Perez. who comes from Puerto Rico, but he comes out of a Protestant tradition. Cardinal Wuerl, ordaining priests in June 23rd in St. Matthews, Washington. And this is not our largest family, but it's close. Bishop Pates ordained Father Corey Soraya at St. Ambrose Cathedral in Des Moines on July 8th. Bishop Laverde ordaining Father Randy Sly in the Diocese of Arlington. And then our largest ordination class up to now has been in Fort Worth. Bishop Ban ordained 6 men for the Ordinariate on June 30th. And here's another picture of that. And this is just an interesting historical note. This is a father-son team. Father Charles Huff III is my vicar for clergy. He served for many years as canon to the ordinary in the Episcopal Diocese of Fort Worth. And Father Charles Huff IV is the pastor of Our Lady of Walsingham, Houston. Bishop Estevez ordained Father Nicholas Marziani in Jacksonville on June 17th. Our circumscription involves Canada as well, and our first Canadian ordinations happened in Calgary. Early this summer, Father Wright and Father Kenyon ordained by Bishop Fred Henry. In Baltimore here, Archbishop Laurie ordains Father Anthony Vidal and Father Jason Catania, June 9th. And from Charleston, actually from Greenville, but the Bishop of Charleston ordaining John David Chalmers on June 3rd. Father Chalmers' wife, Margaret, is the canonist and chancellor for the Ordinariate. And I thought Bishop Guglielmoni's expression really might have anticipated questions that you would have as well. So let's see what we can do here. As we stand now, we have 23 incarnated priests in the Ordinariate, and we are in the process of doing paperwork for 8 more ordinations, waiting on a couple of cases for rescripts from the CDF in Rome. It overwhelms me to think about this, but I emphasize the word aspirant here, but there are 69 files that we're dealing with now, still, of men that are interested in exploring the question of vocation to priesthood. We have 35 communities now that are at some level part of the Ordinariate. They're usually quite small, and so we have tremendous challenges in that area to help them and strengthen them and grow them. And the Apostolic Constitution requires that we keep a list of individual people that want to belong to the Ordinariate, and they have to indicate their desire in writing. And so far, we've received 1,336 petitions in our office in Houston. How many there are there, we're not exactly sure yet. This is one of the things that I've really worked hard on with my clergy, with the clergy that I serve with, and with the people, to understand the mission priorities of the Ordinariate. There are so many different accounts of what Anglicanorum Cedibus means. And I think this is the one area where we've really had to work hard to get these priorities right, and in this particular order. First of all, to embrace the ecclesiology of communion, which lies at the heart of Catholic faith, bearing in mind that the Ordinariates are intended to be a work of Christian unity. And secondly, and I emphasize in this particular order to bring forward the distinctive elements of the Anglican patrimony as a gift to be shared within the Catholic Church. I find that if we reverse that priority, we go in a different direction. And so we're working very hard to emphasize that this particular order is the one we want for our mission. By the way, I was talking with somebody at the break, and on point 2, if you need some good text in sacral language for the Liturgy of the Hours revisions, there are all sorts of wonderful Book of Common Prayer texts in the public domain. You don't have to pay any royalties for it. Who may belong to the Ordinariate? We found this a question that has come up time and time again. Anglicanorum Cedibus specifies that the Ordinariate is composed of the lay faithful, clerics and members of institutes of consecrated life and societies of apostolic life, emphasis here, originally belonging to the Anglican Communion and now in full communion with the Catholic Church, or who received the sacrament of initiation within the jurisdiction of the Ordinariate. In other words, we have an evangelistic opportunity. And in the associated complementary norms, those baptized previously as Catholics outside the Ordinariate are not ordinarily eligible for membership unless they are members of a family belonging to the Ordinariate. My next slide shows why it's important that we keep these matters before us. Because we've struggled with the question of whether the extraordinary form can be used in the Ordinariate communities. What we've concluded, and we've asked Rome to support us on this, which they have beautifully, and I'm grateful for the support. The extraordinary form is not an integral part of the Anglican patrimony, which has as one of its core principles the liturgy and the vernacular. And it's a pastoral concern as well as a patriarchal concern, if you will, because if we let what seems to have started develop further, we would inevitably attract lifelong Catholics who desire a traditional liturgy. And that's wonderful, except it's not part of our patrimony, and we are concerned about the consequences that that would have for communion. The Ordinariate will grow by being true to the vision of Anglicanorum Cedibus as an instrument of Catholic unity and evangelization. Cardinal Wuerl, our delegate, received at the very end of last year an instruction from the CDW on what the Ordinariate's liturgy should be. And indeed, this applies also to those congregations of the Anglican use, the personal parishes that were formed as part of the pastoral provision earlier. And here's the simple instructions. For both Anglican use congregations and the Ordinariate, bring the Book of Divine Worship into conformity with those texts that it shares with the Roman Missal. And secondly, to retire the right to contemporary options in the Book of Divine Worship and use the Roman Missal, 3rd edition, if a contemporary form is desired in one's community. So that's what we've been doing, and we've completed the work in the first bullet point of bringing our text, the BDW text, in conformity with those areas of the Roman Missal that are required. And that's been done, and that's about to be published. We also have been supported and look forward to the future support of a joint interdicasterial commission of the CDF and the CDW, Anglicanae Traditionis, who are working in a massive project, really, to establish a liturgy for all of the ordinariates. Already, marriage and funeral rites have been created. It's a massive project for a number of reasons. One is the culture of the three ordinariates in the UK, here in the US and Canada, and in Australia are somewhat different. For instance, in the UK, most of the ordinariate communities have been living with the ordinary form of the Mass, of the Roman Rite for a long, long time. Even while they were Anglicans, they were using the Roman Missal. So, the business of trying to come up with one liturgy to unite us all has proven to be, and it will be, a challenging task. We're supported on this by Archbishop Cordileone from this house on that commission. The commission has, as I've been at least briefed on the matter, set up a ratio for the liturgical norms for the ordinariate. And I think they're helpful they haven't been published. These are not actually their words, they're my words, but I think they're very helpful just to hear these, to see where the thinking of Rome is on this. That we should continue to strive for substantial unity within the Roman Rite, while including those liturgical texts that are proper to the Anglican tradition. Secondly, to minimize options and to respect these texts in their integrity. That we should try to avoid the cafeteria approach to liturgy, which picks and chooses. And as you know, that is one of the things. I think parish priests must be a lot like old guys in their garage working on their cars. They always are tinkering. And we need to be disciplined. Particularly, the ordinariate needs to be very disciplined at this early time in its life. And the third point, to be an instrument for the sanctification of the faithful, preserving their Anglican identity, all the while promoting deeper communion with the Catholic Church. Here's our financial picture, and it's dire, but the nice thing about embracing the Franciscan model is it really doesn't matter, for at least in God's eyes. But we are very grateful for the grant from Catholic Home Missions, which has helped tremendously in the startup costs, as we've especially had to work on establishing norms. And that's been costly in terms of the resources that we've had to draw on. I want to thank particularly the Diocese of Amarillo for a gift out of the blue. Certainly, I have to thank from the bottom of my heart Cardinal DiNardo, who transferred the property of Our Lady of Walsingham, Houston to us only last month, which was an extraordinary gift. It's a very valuable piece of property, and I was able to buy it with a personal check for $10, and I thank you, Cardinal, for that. Okay. We have basically 3 employees in the Ordinariate. We can pay for our executive assistant, and the Archdiocese of Washington has lent us the services of Father Scott Hurd for 3 years, and so he functions as Vicar General. And my sustenance comes from the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, and the University of St. Thomas, St. Mary's Seminary. Most of the time in the middle of the week, I'm teaching patristics and certain, I'm kind of a utility infielder on dogmatics at the seminary as well. So it's a very busy life doing administrative work and teaching at the same time. The human mind is not really designed to think and do administration at the same time. So the formation of clergy, we're about to begin our second program. It is an accelerated program, to be sure. It's a very accelerated program that lasts 4 or 5 months. It was approved by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith 2 years ago, has been used in England twice, and now here in the US and Canada, this will be our second time as well. We teach these classes at St. Mary's Seminary through their marvelous distance learning setup, and we have to acknowledge an extraordinary gift from the Knights of Columbus that has made that possible, to take this really impressive system and plug it into the World Wide Web so that we can teach wherever people are. Our lectures have been primarily the seminary faculty, and the syllabus that we follow, which was approved by the CDF, is structured closely on the Catechism, the Universal Catechism. But we do not underestimate the challenges of forming priests. I'm all too aware of the awesome steps it is to move from coming into full communion so quickly, then becoming a priest. And we obviously are going to have to notch up the question of post-ordination training in the future. With all of these clergy coming in, people will wisely ask the question, how are you going to pay for them? And this was a nightmare that plagued my life early on, and as well as it did my colleague in England, Msgr Keith Newton. How are we going to do all this? Our solution to try to honor the canons on this question was to come up with, we called it a mutual ministry plan, but it was to ask we asked and required the candidates to submit a signed statement of their financial condition, including anticipated compensation, their indebtedness, whether they have adequate medical insurance, and retirement resources. So we've asked them to give us an honest and clear picture of what their financial condition is, and we only will go forward in terms of ordination once we're satisfied that this can be realistically accomplished. Clergy are allowed in the Ordinariate to serve in a diocese or in an agency, or they could engage in a compatible secular profession as well, according to a complementary norm 7.3, so that we can provide adequate financial support. And I want to thank a number of you for your support. I can think of several places around the country where you've been incredible on this. And I thank you very much for that, and I will continue to pray for those gifts. I'm going to bring this home very quickly here. The Holy See has given us some instruction on how we should establish ordinariate communities. This requires close collaboration with the local bishop. Ignore my last point there. That ancient interpolation is meant to be tongue-in-cheek. And finally, I think I have one more thing here. Structures. Just quickly on this, we've had our governing statutes approved, and we are able now to erect the Governing Council of the Ordinariate. The Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops has joined with us in asking for a deanery for Canada, and we have now also a set of particular norms that have been approved as well for the Ordinariate. My final slide is simply to pay tribute to our delegate, Cardinal Wuerl, who has been extraordinary in his support and wise counsel in laying the foundations for the Ordinariate. And I want to thank you, dear Amicus Petri, for helping to found us under the title, the Chair of St. Peter, which is something that we carry with such gratitude and pride. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monsignor. And how about questions, brothers, for Cardinal DiNardo, Archbishop Curtis, Archbishop Vigneron.
Not a question, simply a statement. Having had to work closely with this, I want to thank Monsignor Steenson and his work of a Catholic heart and mind to bring some very yearning priests and people into full communion with Rome, whose reaction to all of this has been thanksgiving and joy. May the heart of communion with Rome continue under your able leadership, Monsignor Steenson. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence.
Thanks, Senator. Archbishop
Monsignor,
Curtis.
I have a question. Are all the priests, Anglican priests that are coming in, do you receive both the married and single? And then secondly, are the priests allowed to marry after they have ordained as priests?
Okay, that's a very good question. And the answer is we have married priests that are coming in, but it requires the Holy Father himself must give permission for us to move forward in those cases. After they come in, that is their state of life. There is no remarriage. We observe the same discipline that the Church has always observed on those questions, and so no remarriage afterward.
Archbishop Vigneron, followed by Cardinal Wuerl.
Monsignor, you spoke about the second point, making your contribution, the ordinariate, the clergy, the lay faithful, to all of us. Could you offer me some thoughts you have about that? For example, when might we expect books about the contribution, that theological contribution of theologians in the Ordinariate, helping all of us think more deeply about what it is to be a Catholic, or books about spirituality? I, for example, think immediately of what the Ordinariate might offer to us as a way of thinking about Cardinal Newman. That would be just one little example. But, I mean, you're just beginning, but when can we look forward to your riches being our riches?
Oh, thank you, Archbishop, for that question. And I hope, I mean, we certainly soon, I mean, there are many that are keen to make contributions. One of the leading church historians in England, Dr. Edward Norman, was just, for instance, received into the Ordinariate in England. There are real gifts to be had there, and I think that you're mentioning Cardinal Newman is a very important point, because there exists a very significant and dare I say glorious theological tradition that is there to be utilized and to draw upon. In my field in patristics, we always thought that patristics as a discipline started in Anglicanism. No, that's unfair, but certainly I think the point is that there is a rich tradition to draw on, and I think we look forward very much to sharing this in every way we can. It will, I think, require, my prayer is that someday I might actually have a little bit of free time to write something myself, and right now we're all struggling to keep things going, but I know there are several well-trained men that are in the Ordinariate here in the United States that could certainly function at that level, could teach very effectively and at seminary level in the Catholic Church.
Cardinal Wuerl.
Thank you, Your Eminence. I would just like to say a word of appreciation. I'd like to direct my first words of appreciation to you, Monsignor Steenson. Thank you for the extraordinary job you have done in helping to organize this Ordinariate, launch it, and now provide it direction. But I want to express my profound gratitude to all of my brother bishops, to all of the bishops here in our conference. When the Holy Father asked for this process to begin and issued Anglicanorum Cedibus, he asked explicitly that it be done in full cooperation with the Conference of Bishops. And you, Cardinal Dolan, and your predecessor, Cardinal Francis George, welcomed this whole process with open arms. And there are two bishops here in the House who worked very, very closely with us from the very beginning as part of this conference's committee that would connect with the work of the delegate, the work of the Ordinariate with the conference, Bishop Kevin Van and Bishop Robert McManus. And so I want to acknowledge both of them and thank them for their service, but to thank all of you for welcoming this concept and actually making it possible to have been realized by the generosity of your contributions educationally and financially to these men who are now members of the Ordinariate. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you, Eminence. Bishop Bishop Guglielmo, then we'll move on. All right, please, Bishop.
Gregory Hartmeyer from Savannah. Monsignor, thank you.
Thank you.
What is the expected process of application for an Anglican bishop? And how would we determine, or how would we be able to find out the status of an application?
Could you just help me with the question again? An Anglican bishop?
Yes.
That might wish to come in.
A Catholic priest.
Yeah. The process, and what was the second part of the question?
How do we find out the status of an application that's in process?
Of course, the complementary norms of Anglicanorum Cedibus give recognition to the significance of that man's ministry. And he can be permitted to, for instance, retain the symbols of the office that he served, that he once held in the Anglican Communion as he comes in. But what we've done is we have met with, when men are ready to come forward and when they're ready to make that step, we simply meet with them, make sure that they understand the significance of what the steps are, and we want to make sure that there's a first read, if you will, that goes to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, looking at the particulars of the case to make sure there are no impediments to ordination. And then from that point on, it's simply a pastoral process of helping that individual work through the spiritual and theological things that have to happen, the transitions, and it's in my case, it took me 2 years. I went through the pastoral provision, and I thought I was moving at the speed of light. The Ordinariate is probably closer, practically speaking, to a year, so it's even more challenging in a way. But it is recognized particularly that those who have functioned as bishops in the Anglican Communion will understand the discipline, and it would be a joy to work with somebody. I hear every once in a while from colleagues, old colleagues that are interested in this, and I rejoice when it happens.
Well, we rejoice in you, Monsignor. Thank you, and thanks to your presentation. We're much more enlightened.
Yeah. Eminence, may I just say in conclusion how wonderful it is to be a Catholic. I tell you, that's the thing that we want you to hear from us. We are so happy to be home.
And that's good to hear that. Thank you. Excellent. That's the new evangelization. Could Archbishop